At 7 in the morning, I was folding paper crane place cards for a wedding tasting nobody had paid for yet, because wealthy people like to see beauty before deciding whether beauty deserved money. The cranes were cream-colored, printed with names in dark green ink, and every seventh bird leaned left no matter how sharply I pressed the crease with my thumbnail. That was how most of my work went. From afar, the room looked effortless. Up close, there were fingerprints, coffee rings, a missing invoice, and me muttering apologies to paper. My name was Sun Min-jae. I was 29 and Omega and the assistant operations manager at Hanyul Table, a private culinary studio in Hanam-dong where families with more money than hunger came to design engagement dinners, charity luncheons, memorial teas, and divorces that required canapes. My job title sounded neat. My actual work involved greeting guests, correcting seating charts, negotiating with florists, finding missing aprons, calming chefs, hiding cracked plates, translating rich people's vague moods into practical instructions, and carrying crates of produce while pretending my lower back had never been invented. I liked it more than I admitted. I liked rooms before guests entered them, when linen still held ironed lines and every table believed in itself. I had a notebook full of ideas for a tea and supper house I wanted to open one day near Iljiro, with cheap lunches, late-night rice, and old family recipes donated by strangers. I also had medical bills from my mother's thyroid surgery, a cousin sleeping on my living room floor while she trained for pastry certification, and a debt collector calling my workplace because my late father had considered paperwork a form of gambling. So I folded cranes. I checked delivery slips. I watered the basil in the windowsill because the chef forgot living things unless they were edible within 2 hours. I smiled at guests who called me the young man after reading the name tag pinned to my apron. "Your crane looks drunk," Min-jae said from behind a tower of mixing bowls. "That's its private life. It is leaning toward the bride's father. Dangerous taste." "Don't insult my staff," I said. "The crane has better judgment than half the people who come here." Jae-kyung snorted and dusted flour from her cheek with the back of her wrist, which only moved the flour higher. She was my closest friend at work, and for 3 months, my unofficial roommate in the building next door. She was a pastry chef with sharp eyebrows, sharper opinions, and a business plan for a tiny bakery she refused to call a dream because dreams sounded too easy to steal. Her former mentor had already copied 2 of her recipes and served them at a hotel brunch under a poetic title involving clouds. Since then, she had hidden her notebooks under rice sacks and trusted nobody who praised her macarons without naming the filling. "You got another call," she said, lowering her voice. I kept folding. "From my mother?" "From someone named Director Park. Reception put him on hold. Then he hung up after asking whether you were paid monthly or hourly." The crane collapsed under my thumb. I looked toward the open kitchen where Chef O was arguing with the fishmonger on speakerphone. "He's not a director." I guessed from the way he breathed at the receptionist. "He worked with my father." "That means many things." "None of them good." Jae-kyung wiped her hands on her apron and came around the table. "Min-jae." "I'm handling it." That sentence is usually what people say while carrying a box with the bottom falling out. The bottom has dignity. The bottom is about to introduce itself to the floor. I laughed because the alternative would have made her soften, and if Jae-kyung softened before 9 in the morning, the day felt doomed. I slid the ruined crane aside, made a new one, and checked the studio schedule. At noon, we had a tasting for a charity chairwoman. At 3, a memorial tea planning meeting. At 7, a private dinner hosted by Kang Do-hyun, our owner and chief executive, who had never once arrived early, late, or emotionally available. He owned Hanyul Table through Juhwa Hospitality, which owned restaurants, hotels, distribution centers, and several quiet companies with names too plain to trust. He was 34, an alpha, and the sort of man people called cold because precise sounded less dramatic. He visited the studio twice a month and noticed everything: a chipped bowl, a misplaced invoice, a nervous dishwasher, a guest whose laugh did not match his posture. He wore charcoal suits, spoke in low sentences, and left rooms cleaner than he found them because everyone straightened under his gaze. I did not dislike him. Disliking someone required more personal information than I had. I respected his efficiency and avoided his attention like a very expensive knife. At 10, my mother called from her herbal tea stall in Mangwon Market and asked whether mugwort tasted bitter because she had brewed it wrong or because life had decided to speak through leaves. Both, I said, wedging the phone between my shoulder and cheek while arranging ceramic cups. Did you take your medicine? Yes, nurse son. Nurse you nah, maybe. I'm just the unpaid reminder service. Your sister reminds me with threats. You remind me with guilt. I prefer guilt. My younger sister, Yuna, was 23, stubborn, and halfway through nursing school on scholarships, part-time shifts, and anger. She had inherited our mother's hands and my father's habit of acting brave after making mistakes, though she made fewer of them and apologized faster. Lately, she had been talking about taking a semester off to help at the stall. I had been pretending not to understand her hints. Director Park called the studio, I told my mother. Her silence changed the sound of the market behind her. The vendor next door was shouting about radishes, but my mother seemed to step away from the noise. Don't meet him alone. I wasn't planning to invite him to tea. Your father trusted people who smiled while counting. You are smarter than him, but smart people still open doors when someone knocks politely. I won't open the door. Min-jae. I know, she exhaled. Come by after work. I made anchovy broth. That meant she was worried enough to feed me soup. I have a late dinner event. With that owner? With his guests. Is he handsome? Mother. I had surgery, not blindness. You haven't met him. I've seen his photo in the business paper. He looks like a man who has never spilled soup on himself. That's not handsome, that's suspicious. Suspicious men should marry people who own aprons. It balances the world. I heard myself laugh, and for a second the debt collector, the unpaid bills, the cranes, and Kang Do-hyun's impossible dinner all moved to the far edge of the morning. My mother had a talent for making hardship sit down like an impolite guest and wait its turn. The talent had limits. At noon, the charity chairwoman rejected the chrysanthemum tea because it looked too honest. At 3, the memorial family argued over whether grief required beef. At 5, the florist delivered white lilies instead of wild camellias, and Chef O threatened to retire into the sea. By 6:30, I had changed my shirt, burned 2 fingers on a kettle, and persuaded an assistant from Kang Do-hyun's head office that the studio could not replace an entire dining table because one guest had recently developed a fear of walnut. The private dinner was for 8 people. The guest list came encrypted through the executive office, which was new. Usually I received names, allergies, and preferences. This time I received initials and instructions. No photographs, no temporary staff, no exterior windows left uncovered, no deliveries after 6, no alcohol served before Kang Do-hyun sat down. Jae-kyung read the list over my shoulder. This is either a family dinner or a funeral for someone still alive. Same seating chart either way. You okay? Ask me after dessert. The first guests arrived in dark cars without visible logos. Men in tailored coats stepped out first, not as guests but as weather. They checked the entrance, the corridor, the kitchen door. One of them nodded to me and showed credentials from Juhwa's private security office. His name was Ma Dong-soo. I had seen him once behind Kang Do-hyun, silent and broad, with a scar near his ear and the tired eyes of a man who had apologized to too many mothers. The dining room is ready, I said. Mr. Kang is delayed by 12 minutes. Then the soup will be delayed by 12 minutes. His mouth almost moved. He said you would say something like that. I paused with my hand on the reservation tablet. Mr. Kang discusses my soup timing. He discusses things that cause trouble. Soup and I are honored. The guests entered in pairs. Kang Do-hyun's mother arrived third. Kang Yoon-seo wore a pearl gray hanbok jacket over a modern black dress, and every person in the room adjusted around her without being asked. She was elegant in the way old houses were elegant, all polish on the visible surfaces and locked rooms beyond. Her hair was pinned low. Her cane was ebony with a silver handle, though she used it more like punctuation than support. Beside her walked a younger man with gentle eyes and an expensive watch who smiled at me as if he had learned kindness from a manual and was determined to apply it properly. "Son Min-jae?" she asked. I bowed. "Yes, ma'am." My son said the studio would function even if the city lost power. Only if the gas line remains loyal. The younger man coughed into his hand. Kang Yoon-seo studied me for a beat longer than manners required. Good. I dislike frightened staff. "Then we will do our best to look brave." This time her mouth curved, barely. "See that you do." The last guest before Kang Do-hyun was a man I recognized from business articles. Choi Sung-hwan, director of the Cheongmu Foundation, rumored philanthropist, confirmed collector of art and favors. He had the kind of face that looked pleasant in photographs because photographs could not record pressure. He scanned the room, found me, and smiled. "An Omega operations manager," he said, removing his gloves finger by finger. "Hanul Table has a charming hiring philosophy." I kept my own smile professional. "We hire people who can count plates and keep secrets about who asks for extra sauce." A security man shifted near the door. Choi Sung-hwan laughed softly. "Sharp. Does Mr. Kang encourage that?" "Mr. Kang encourages accurate invoices." "I see why he keeps you near the dining room." That was the first sentence that made me want to stand behind something solid. I had been insulted by guests before. Insults were part of hospitality, like steam burns and missing umbrellas. This felt less like an insult and more like someone measuring a hallway before buying the building. Kang Do-hyun arrived 12 minutes late, exactly as predicted, with rain on the shoulders of his coat and no apology in his expression. The room altered. Conversations thinned. Even his mother turned her head a fraction before he spoke. "Mother." "Do-hyun." "Director Choi." "Kang," Choi replied, smiling as if they were old friends and old debts. Do-hyun's gaze moved once around the room. It passed over the covered windows, the security positions, the guests, the staff line near the kitchen, and me. When it came back, it stayed half a second longer than usual on my face. "Mr. Sun," he said, "the tea service will come after the second course." It was scheduled after the first. Now it is after the second. Then the first will stop feeling special, sir. A breath of surprise passed through the staff. Jae-kyung, standing near the pastry station, stared hard at a tray to avoid smiling. Do-hyun removed his coat and handed it to Ma Dong-soo. "The first course has survived worse." "Understood." His eyes lowered briefly to the red mark on my burned fingers. I had forgotten to cover it. "Ice that after seating." "I'm working." That was not unclear. "I'll ice it when the soup forgives me." His mother made a sound into her teacup. It might have been amusement. It might have been warning. With Kang Yoon-seo, the difference was probably expensive. Dinner began like a business negotiation pretending to be family. I served pine nut porridge, grilled mushrooms, delicate jeon folded like letters, and fish with ginger that Chef O plated as if presenting evidence. The guests spoke of charity donations, land use, shipping delays, hospital wings, and a cultural center planned near Incheon. Under the polite phrases, names moved like stones in a board game. Do-hyun said little. He listened. When he did speak, people stopped arranging their spoons. I had just poured barley tea for Kang Do-hyun when Choi Sung-hwan asked, "And your engagement?" The table quieted too neatly. Do-hyun placed his chopsticks down. "There is none." Your father seemed confident before his illness. A spouse steadies succession. The elders feel reassured by continuity. My father feels confident about many things from a hospital bed. None of them bind me. Kang Do-hyun's fingers tightened around her cup, not enough for anyone careless to see. I saw because watching hands was part of my job. Choi turned his smile toward her. Madam Kang has always understood the value of timing. "My son understands the value of refusal," she said. "Refusal is most elegant when followed by a better offer." Do-hyun's face did not change, but his knuckles whitened against the table edge. It lasted a second. Then he released his hand. I stepped forward with the next dish because interruptions were useful when men began speaking in blades. I was setting down a bowl near Choi when his hand caught my wrist. It was not a grab exactly. His fingers rested lightly, the way a wealthy customer touched fabric he had not yet decided to buy. The room noticed without looking. "This one is steady," Choi said. "Where did you find him?" I looked at his hand on my wrist and counted to 2. The staff entrance, most mornings. His thumb pressed near the burn. Pain sparked up my arm. My expression held because pride was sometimes just refusing to provide entertainment. "Careful," Do-hyun said. The single word was quiet enough that anyone outside the room might have missed it. Inside, the air flattened. Choi released me. "No harm meant." "Then you will have no difficulty avoiding repetition." Kang Do-hyun lifted her cup. "Mr. Sun, please bring the tea now. The first course has proved resilient." I bowed and left before my face could reveal how much my wrist hurt. In the kitchen, Jae-kyung caught my elbow. "What happened?" "Rich people happened." She looked at the mark. "I'll pour hot caramel on him." "Tempting, but we need the deposit." "You joke when you're angry." "I also invoice." Min-jae. "I know." I took the cold pack she shoved at me and held it to my wrist for exactly 10 seconds before the bell from the dining room rang. By the time dessert ended, I had learned 3 things. Choi Sung-hwan wanted Kang Do-hyun married to someone from his network. Kang Do-hyun wanted that even less than her son did. And I had somehow been noticed by people whose attention had never improved anyone's life. At 9:40, as guests were leaving, Director Park arrived at the back entrance. I found him by the service corridor, arguing with our dishwasher in a voice polished for intimidation. He was in his 50s with a narrow tie and hair dyed too black. He had managed one of my father's failed supply companies, or claimed to. Since my father's death, he had produced loan agreements with signatures that looked almost genuine if you didn't know how my father curved the final stroke of his name when drunk. "There you are," he said when he saw me. "You are hard to reach." "I work." "So do I. Debt collection is honest labor when debt exists." "The amount changed 3 times. Interest has a personality." "So does fraud." His smile thinned. "Your mother still sells tea in Mangwon, yes? Small stall, no security. Your sister takes the late bus from campus. People talk. They worry when families pretend obligations disappear." I felt the corridor narrow around me. "Leave them alone." "Pay." I asked for copies of the original transfer records. And I asked for respect. Then we're both disappointed. He took 1 step closer. Behind me, the kitchen noise seemed too far away. I had handled men like him in daylight, over counters, with witnesses. At night, in a service corridor, his cheap cologne and calm voice made my body understand the difference between confidence and safety. A hand came down on Director Park's shoulder. Kang Do-hyun did not squeeze. He did not need to. Director Park's face emptied of color in a way that told me he knew exactly whose hand had found him. "You entered through a private service door," Do-hyun said. Director Park swallowed. "I had business with Mr. Sun. Not here. This is personal." "Nothing remains personal after you threaten a staff member's family on my property." Park tried to laugh. It died unfinished. "Mr. Kang, I meant no disrespect. To me? To anyone. You meant enough." Do-hyun looked past him to Ma Dong-soo, who had appeared at the end of the corridor without making a sound. "Escort him out. Copy his identification. Find who allowed him through the gate." Park twisted toward me. "This won't erase your father's debt." "No," Do-hyun said, "but it will make the next conversation expensive." After Ma removed him, the corridor felt too quiet. I realized I was still holding a tray with 3 used cups. My fingers had cramped around the edge. Do-hyun looked at the tray. "Put that down. I have to close service. Your staff can close service. My staff has already worked 14 hours. Then I will pay overtime. They're not furniture you can solve by throwing money near them." His eyes returned to my face. I was solving exhaustion. Try asking before solving. For a moment I thought I had gone too far. Then he said, "Are you injured?" "No. Your wrist. It's a mark. Marks love attention. Don't feed it." The faintest line appeared between his brows. "You argue after being threatened." "I schedule arguments where I can fit them." "Mr. Sun." "Sir." "Come to my office tomorrow at 8. My laugh came out shorter than intended. "For what? Being threatened efficiently?" "For an offer." "I don't accept offers from men who phrase them like summons." "Then come at 8:30. "That's not what I meant." "I know." He walked away before I could decide whether I had won anything. I arrived at 8:27 because being late to protest punctuality was still being late. Kang Do-hyun's office occupied the upper floor of Juhwa Hospitality's headquarters near Gwanghwamun, all stone, glass, and employees who looked as if they had been hired for their ability to panic quietly. A receptionist led me past framed restaurant reviews and photographs of ribbon cuttings into a room where the city spread below the windows, gray and restless under morning rain. Do-hyun stood behind his desk reading a file. He wore a navy suit today. The color made him look less like a blade and more like the box it came in. "Coffee?" he asked. "No, thank you." "Tea?" "No." "Water?" "I hydrated before entering enemy territory." He glanced up. "This is a hospitality company." "That's what makes it subtle." A woman seated near the window looked up from a tablet. She was in her 40s with cropped hair and a calm expression that seemed professionally immune to nonsense. "I like him." Do-hyun closed the file. "Oh, this is attorney Oh Se-ra. She does not work for my family." "I work for contracts," Oh Se-ra said, "and occasionally for fools who need them explained." "Which one am I?" I asked. "That depends on whether you read before signing." I sat because my knees had decided pride could happen from a chair. "I'm not signing anything." "You haven't heard it." "I heard offer last night from a man whose security chief collects identification like autumn leaves. I can guess the atmosphere." Do-hyun opened the file and slid photographs across the desk. Director Park entering our service gate. Director Park outside my mother's stall. Director Park near UNA's campus bus stop. My stomach tightened so sharply I had to place both hands on my lap to keep them still. "He has no legal claim," Attorney O said. "2 of the loan documents are likely forged. One may be partially valid, though the interest terms violate lending laws. The problem is speed. He is backed by Choi Sung-hwan's people. Why would someone like Choi care about my father's debt? Do-hyun answered. Because Park sells pressure. Choi buys leverage. Last night he saw I objected to you being touched. This morning Park was told to become useful. I stared at him. Because of a wrist? Because Choi tests reactions. And I became a reaction. Yes, he said it plainly, which should have made me hate him. Instead, I appreciated the absence of perfume on the truth. What do you want? My family council votes in 6 weeks on succession control over Juhwa's private holdings. My father wrote a condition after my sister died. To inherit full authority, I must either accept the spouse chosen by the elder council or present a legally registered spouse of my own before the vote. Conveniently dramatic. My father enjoys traps with paperwork. Marry someone you know. I know people who can be bought by the men trying to buy me. And I'm different because I can't afford to be bought? You're different because you corrected my seating order in front of my mother. That seems a thin foundation for marriage. It was not the only observation. Attorney O tapped her pen once. Mr. Kang is suggesting a strictly limited legal marriage. 6 months minimum, 9 months maximum, unless both parties renew. Public appearances as required for the succession vote and family events. Separate rooms, separate accounts, no expectation of intimacy. A privacy clause protecting your personal history. Legal action against Park and any associated collectors. Payment of your verified family medical debt as a signing benefit, not recoverable if the marriage ends. Security for your mother and sister. Employment protection or resignation compensation, your preference. Independent counsel paid by Mr. Kang but chosen by you. I looked from her to him. You prepared this between last night and now. I prepare for consequences, Do-hyun said. Did you prepare for me saying no? Yes. What happens then? Attorney O pursues the debt case for 30 days at my expense. Ma increases exterior surveillance near your family for the same period. After that, you decide whether to continue with your own counsel. I had expected pressure. I had prepared my anger for pressure. It found no proper surface and stumbled. Why offer help if I refuse? Because Choi created the immediate risk by watching me, he said. I don't charge other people for my enemy's conclusions. Attorney O watched me carefully. She had the look of someone who had heard men say noble things and then billed them for lying. Take the document home. Show it to a lawyer. Change anything that feels like a cage. A cage with polite font is still a cage. Then bring a hammer. Do-hyun's mouth moved slightly. Not a smile, a recognition of one, maybe. I took the folder. It was heavier than it looked. Why a date for one night then? Last night sounded like you needed a spouse, not a dinner companion. My mother's birthday dinner is tomorrow. She invited the family elders and Choi before I could refuse. I planned to bring a temporary date to stop them from presenting a candidate at the table. Me. Only if you agreed to the one-night appearance, the marriage discussion would remain separate. Your mother met me for 12 seconds and decided I was useful? My mother met my father for 12 minutes and predicted every ruin in his future. She trusts first impressions too much. Does she know about this offer? She knows I intended to ask someone. She does not know who. I stood with the folder clutched against my chest like a shield made of printer paper. I'll read it. Good. Reading is not agreeing. I know. Do you? His eyes held mine with the steady patience of a man accustomed to being insulted by people who were afraid to raise their voices. I know the difference between entering a room and locking the door behind someone. I wanted to believe that. Wanting annoyed me more than suspicion did. I spent the afternoon in 3 places: a legal aid office near Seoul City Hall, my mother's tea stall, and the roof of my building, where I went when my apartment felt too small for the number of problems trying to sit inside it. The legal aid lawyer, Kim Do-hyun, read the proposed agreement twice and said, "Whoever drafted this expected you to fight." Is that good? It means the traps are labeled. I would still add more exits. He helped me mark clauses. No shared bedroom requirement. No medical decisions without written consent. No restriction on my work unless a specific threat was documented. Security could not enter my family's spaces without permission except in immediate danger. Any public statement about me required my approval. If the marriage ended, my family's legal protection continued until the debt case closed. I added one more clause myself. Kang Do-hyun could not use the money paid toward my family's debts to influence my personal decisions, including whether I stayed employed at Hanul Table, moved residence, attended family functions, or ended the marriage at the first exit date. Kim Do-hyun read that clause and looked at me over his glasses. "You have been practicing." I grew up with a father who apologized after causing damage and expected gratitude for the apology. That teaches contract law faster than school. At my mother's stall, Yuna was chopping ginger with unnecessary violence while my mother pretended not to watch me. I told them enough. Not all. Mothers could hear missing pieces, but I still left some outside the room because fear multiplied when spoken too soon. Yuna put the knife down. "Absolutely not." "I haven't agreed." "Good. Continue." "Park has Choi behind him. We need legal help." "We can go to the police, with forged documents tied to a foundation that funds police retirement banquets." My mother said it softly. Yuna and I both turned. She wiped the counter with a cloth, eyes lowered. "Your father once delivered tea to their office. Men like that never stand in front. They stand behind polite doors." Yuna's face tightened. "So we sell Min-jae?" "No," I said. "That's what this is. It's a legal arrangement with ugly furniture. It's marriage. It's paperwork first. And when paperwork grows teeth?" I had no clever answer. My mother poured 3 cups of ginger tea and pushed one toward me. "Do you trust him?" "No." "Do you trust the lawyer?" "More." "Do you trust yourself?" That one made me look up. She smiled sadly. "You always ask whether a door is safe. Sometimes ask whether your feet still know how to walk." On the roof that night, Jae-kyung took the agreement from me and read with the grim focus she usually reserved for recipes stolen by men with better lighting. Her subplot, as she called her own life when mocking mine, had worsened. The hotel that copied her cloud macarons had offered to collaborate on a pastry line using her old mentor as lead consultant. She wanted to burn down the hotel in a legal and profitable way. 6 months, she said. Separate rooms, exit clauses, legal aid, security, debt relief. This is either surprisingly decent or villainy wearing clean socks. Maybe both. "Are you attracted to him?" I nearly dropped my tea. "He is my boss." That was not an answer. "He is a man who schedules human emotion in 6-week blocks." Some people like organization. Some people alphabetize poison. She folded the agreement and handed it back. "Do the one-night date if the revised terms are accepted. Don't agree to marriage until you see how he behaves when embarrassed." "That's your test?" "Yes. Men reveal themselves when plans go wrong, ovens fail, or mothers speak." His mother spoke before dessert the next night. I wore my own suit, not the one Do-hyun's office offered. It was dark brown, bought second-hand and tailored by a dry cleaner who called every customer "professor" to improve morale. Do-hyun noticed the suit when I met him in the lobby of his mother's house, a restored mansion in Seongbuk-dong with stone steps, pine trees, and security discreet enough to be more alarming than visible guards. "You refused the clothes," he said. "I accepted the car. That felt like enough surrender for one evening." "The suit fits." "That's because I paid someone who measures instead of assumes." He looked at my cuffs, where I had stitched a loose button myself with thread half a shade too dark. "Your left sleeve will lose that button tonight." I looked down. "It has survived 3 years. It is hanging by confidence." "Then it has learned from me." Before he could respond, the front door opened and Kang Do-hyun appeared with her cane and a face bright enough to terrify me. "There you are," she said. Do-hyun bowed. "Mother." She ignored him and took both my hands. "Mr. Sun, Min-jae, may I?" I blinked. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. I dislike calling family by titles." Do-hyun's head turned toward her with the precision of a lock clicking. "Mother." She squeezed my hands as if checking ripeness. "Your hands are cold." "Do-hyun, why is his coat so thin?" "I did not choose his coat." "You should have noticed it." "I noticed his sleeve button." "Buttons do not catch pneumonia." I stared at both of them. This was not the dinner I had rehearsed. I had prepared for interrogation, contempt, perhaps Choi's poisonous courtesy. I had not prepared for Kang Do-hyun scolding her son over my coat. Inside, the dining room held 12 people instead of the promised 8. Family elders, 2 foundation directors, a cousin with pale hair and restless fingers, attorney Oh Choi Seung-hwan, and a man introduced as Lee Ro-woon, Do-hyun's half-brother, through a relationship nobody mentioned directly. Lee Ro-woon was the gentle-eyed man from the studio. He greeted me with genuine sympathy, which made me more nervous than hostility. Do-hyun's hand hovered near my back as he guided me to the table. It did not touch until I shifted away from a server carrying hot soup, and then his fingers pressed lightly between my shoulder blades for the exact time needed to keep me from stepping into danger. He removed them immediately. My mind, annoyingly observant, recorded that. Dinner began with questions disguised as compliments. "You work at Hanul table?" an elder asked. "Yes." "Hospitality is excellent training for a spouse in this family. It teaches patience with unreasonable requests," I said. "I assume that transfers." Lee Ro-woon covered his mouth. Do-hyun drank water. His mother looked delighted. Choi Seung-hwan tilted his head. "And how long have you and Kang been acquainted privately?" "Long enough for him to criticize my sleeve button." "Ah, intimacy." "Textile safety." The cousin with pale hair, Kang Se-jun, laughed aloud, then stopped when an older man frowned at him. I liked him immediately for failing at obedience. The evening might have remained strange but survivable if Kang Do-hyun had not placed a velvet folder beside my plate after the fish course. "I know young people prefer deciding these things themselves," she said, opening it to reveal photographs of wedding venues, fabric samples, and a list titled Winter Auspicious Dates. "But a mother may prepare options." My chopsticks froze halfway to my bowl. Do-hyun said very quietly, "No." His mother did not look at him. "You brought him to my birthday dinner." "As a guest." "As your answer." "Mother." "You needed a date for one night," she said, turning a page. "I am planning responsibly in case one night becomes the only sensible thing you have done in years." A few guests smiled. Choi watched Do-hyun instead of the folder. The room had become a stage, and I had apparently been cast without seeing the script. I closed the velvet folder. The sound was small. It carried. Kang Do-hyun's eyes came to mine. I bowed my head slightly, not enough to surrender. "Madam, I appreciate the honor, truly. But I don't choose fabric while people are still deciding whether I count as a person or a tactic. Her expression did not soften. It sharpened with interest. Do-hyun turned toward me. I kept my hands on the folder. If your son and I ever discuss marriage, even fake marriage, I will need legal terms, time to think, and my own counsel. I will not be planned around like flowers. I arrange flowers for a living. They get thrown away after events. For several seconds, nobody touched their food. Then Kang Do-hyun leaned back. Do-hyun! Yes? His lawyer should meet Sarah. I arranged it. And the coat? I will ask before replacing it. Good. She took the velvet folder back. Min-jae, you may call me Yoon-seo after the second meeting. I may need several meetings. Better, I dislike easy children. Choi Seung-hwan smiled into his wine. Touching. Still, the council requires certainty, not charm. Do-hyun placed his glass down. The council will receive documents. Marriage documents. If we choose. The word we landed with more force than any declaration. It was still strategy, still performance, still built for others to hear. Even so, he had put me inside the grammar. Later, after guests moved to the drawing room, I found myself in the hallway, trying to breathe near an ink painting of cranes that looked much more composed than mine. My sleeve button finally gave up and fell to the floor. I crouched to retrieve it, and a polished shoe stopped nearby. Do-hyun bent before I could straighten. He picked up the button and placed it in his palm. Confidence failed. It had a good run. I apologize for my mother. She is very efficient. She should not have done that. No. He looked at the button instead of me. You handled her better than most elders. I have worked with brides, mourners, donors, and chefs. Your mother has excellent posture, but she is not scarier than a bride whose peonies arrived pink instead of coral. She would enjoy knowing that. Please don't give her my weaknesses. He reached into his jacket and took out a small sewing kit, black leather, old enough that the edges had worn smooth. I stared at it. You carry that? My sister did. I kept it. He seemed to regret the words after speaking them. The hallway changed, not dramatically, just enough that the portraits on the wall felt suddenly intrusive. She sewed buttons? She repaired everything badly, buttons, hems, broken tempers. He opened the kit and removed a needle. May I? You know how? No. Then why offer? Because I am tired of noticing loose things and leaving them loose. The sentence was too odd to answer quickly. I gave him the sleeve. He stood close enough that I could see a faint scar near his thumb. His stitches were terrible. Uneven, too tight, one loop snagged in the fabric. He concentrated as if negotiating a merger. When he finished, the button sat crooked but secure. There, he said. It looks threatened. It will stay. That's not always the same thing. His gaze lifted. For a second, he looked less like the man who owned rooms, and more like someone who had spent years keeping doors shut from the inside. No, he said. It isn't. The next morning, he accepted every revision from my legal aid lawyer except one. The clause about public statements became a three-way argument between me, Do-hyun, and Attorney Oh on a conference call while I sorted invoices at the studio. No statement without your approval, Do-hyun said. But if there is an immediate press threat, we need authority to respond. Respond with facts, I said, not feelings invented by your communications team. Facts may require confirming the marriage. Confirming is different from describing me as your beloved anything. Attorney Oh said, I can add language restricting emotional characterization. Jae Kyung, who had been pretending not to listen while filling tart shells, whispered, Restrict emotional characterization is my new dating policy. I covered the receiver. Stop. Do-hyun heard anyway. Min-jae is present. Pastry has ears. Ask her whether she filed intellectual property documentation for the stolen recipes. Jae-kyung froze. I turned slowly. Why do you know about that? Your staff file notes a complaint against Hotel Miru. It is owned by a Choi affiliate. Jae-kyung came to the phone so fast she nearly knocked over lemon curd. Are you telling me my stolen macarons are part of organized villainy? I am telling you to speak with Attorney Oh before signing any collaboration agreement. She grabbed my wrist. Marry him. I kicked her ankle. Professionally, she added. That was the first moment the arrangement reached beyond my family's emergency and touched a life I had not meant to drag into it. Jae-kyung spent the afternoon with Attorney Oh, emerging pale and furious. Her former mentor had not only copied recipes, he had filed a concept proposal using her handwritten notes photographed during her apprenticeship. Hotel Mireau's collaboration offer would have made her surrender rights to her own pastry line. I thought I was angry before, she told me that night, sitting on my apartment floor with Yuna and 3 boxes of discount kimbap. I was an amateur. Now I have legal anger. Yuna pointed her chopsticks at me. See? Rich men create problems, then hand out lawyers like umbrellas. Actually, this problem already existed. And the rich man noticed because he is planning to marry you. Contractually. That word is doing hard labor. Jae-kyung looked at Yuna. You hate him? I hate that he helps. Ah. Don't me. No, I understand. Jae-kyung peeled open another kimbap box. If a bad situation has no decent doors, the person holding the least terrible one starts looking like architecture. I sat back against the cabinet. My apartment was too small for 3 adults, 1 borrowed rice cooker, 2 drying racks, and the folder that had begun occupying more space than furniture. That's what worries me. Yuna's anger dimmed. I don't want you to marry a door. I know. I also don't want Park near Mom. I know that too. She looked down at her food. I was going to take the semester off. No. You don't get to know me while considering marriage fraud. Legal arrangement. Don't polish it. Fine. I don't get to decide your life either. The sentence hurt coming out, mostly because I had failed to say it before. But don't pause school because you think my life is the family emergency fund. Yuna blinked hard. Jae-kyung suddenly became fascinated with pickled radish. If you want to take a break because you are exhausted, we'll talk, I said. If you do it because of guilt, I will become unbearable. You already are. Then imagine. She laughed once, unwillingly. That was how our family survived certain conversations. We did not solve them. We made a small sound that proved we were still in the same room. I signed the one-night date agreement first, then the marriage contract 3 days later after revisions, second opinions, and a meeting in which Kang Do-hyun served tea strong enough to remove paint and asked me whether I had fertility expectations. I told her I expected people not to ask me that before lunch. She laughed for a full 5 seconds. Do-hyun stared at the teapot as if wishing to drown there. The legal registration happened on a Thursday morning at a district office between an elderly couple renewing documents and a young pair wearing matching sneakers. There were no flowers. I wore my brown suit with the crooked button Do-hyun had repaired. He noticed and said nothing until we stepped outside into pale winter sun. That button offends me, he said. It has sentimental value. It has structural issues. Many marriages begin that way. Ma Dong-soo, standing by the car, made a strangled sound. Do-hyun looked at him. Ma became stone. The first week as Kang Do-hyun's legal spouse did not feel romantic. It felt administrative. I moved into a separate room in his apartment after security found too many blind corners around my building. My room had a private lock, a desk by the river-facing window, and no personality until I placed Yuna's old duck-shaped lamp beside the bed. Mrs. Han, his housekeeper, looked at the lamp and said, "Finally, something here has made a mistake." Do-hyun called it temporary. I told him the lamp had legal residency. Our first real argument came over work. He expected me to stop attending late events. I pointed to the clause saying my profession remained mine. In his kitchen of steel and stone, we negotiated like two countries with poor weather. 4 late events per month, security outside, never inside unless I requested it. No service corridor alone after 10. He would not speak to my manager about my schedule without me present. When he said, "Text Ma when you leave," I made him ask instead of command. He did. The next morning he knocked before entering my hallway and sent security summaries stripped of anything my family had not agreed to share. It was not tenderness, it was correction, and correction mattered because he could have chosen convenience. Kang Do-hyun began planning the wedding anyway. She arrived on a Sunday with 3 binders, 2 assistants, and a florist who looked afraid of leaves. I had not yet finished breakfast when she asked whether I preferred plum blossoms or white camellias. Do-hyun said, "Mother," in the tone of a man watching a small fire approach curtains. Yoon-seo ignored him. She explained that reluctant elders fermented rumors, and a controlled reception could prevent them from deciding I was temporary. I told her no ceremony, no scripted vows, no photographs without approval, no guest list including anyone who had threatened my family, and my mother would choose the tea. Jae-kyung would make dessert only under a contract protecting her recipes. Yoon-seo closed the first binder with a satisfied snap. "Do-hyun, he negotiates better before breakfast than your uncle after whiskey." The reception became a battlefield made of linens and guest permissions. My mother's stall received its first formal vendor contract. Jae-kyung developed a chestnut tart and refused 3 names that sounded symbolic. Yuna scolded Ma Dong-soo for standing too close to her campus shuttle and somehow ended up using him to carry ginger boxes. Every practical detail made the public lie heavier. It also made it harder for his family to pretend I had arrived empty-handed. Meanwhile, Choi Sung-hwan changed tactics. Articles appeared online questioning my father's debt, my job, and whether an Omega employee had gained too much by standing near the CEO. I found the comments during a tasting and went to the linen room before my face could become office gossip. Do-hyun found me between shelves of napkins, angry enough to sue, delete, and announce everything at once. I told him to ask what I wanted. He did, jaw tight, hands closed at his sides. I asked for the comments disabled, not selectively erased, the article preserved for defamation evidence. Yuna warned before my mother saw it, and no public statement calling me beloved. After work, I wanted to go to my mother's stall without him turning the market into a hostage negotiation. He accepted every instruction. At the stall, my mother read the article, stirred her kettle, and said, "They spelled your father's name wrong. If they want to ruin us, they should hire literate enemies." Yuna cried only after laughing. Ma waited across the street until she marched over and gave him rice cakes, as if feeding security was a civic duty. 2 days later, Jae-kyung received a formal apology from Hotel Miro and a licensing offer naming her as lead creator. She suspected Do-hyun had threatened them. He denied threats, then admitted attorney Oh had sent evidence and he had informed Choi's office that stealing pastry concepts while attacking my ethics showed poor thematic discipline. Jae-kyung called him terrifying and useful, then hung up on him. With the advance from the corrected offer, she placed a deposit on a basement bakery near Gongduk. The place smelled of dust and old oil, but she stood in the center with a flashlight like she had found a country. "I can make this work," she said. Then she looked at me and asked, "Can you?" I had no neat answer. The fact that I wanted one told me too much. The reception took place 3 weeks before the council vote at a renovated Hanok gallery owned by one of Unseo's friends. My mother inspected the tea service like a general. Jae-kyung's chestnut tarts sat under glass with her name printed on the menu. I wore a dark green suit I had chosen myself, with Do-hyun's crooked repaired buttons sewn inside the lining at Unseo's insistence. The evening might have passed as a success if Kang Moon-sik, Do-hyun's uncle, had not arrived late with silver hair, rimless glasses, and the mild voice of a man who preferred knives wrapped in silk. "Our new nephew," he said after greeting Unseo. "You have made the family lively. I'll try not to break anything valuable. In this family, value is rarely visible. I work in events. Hidden costs are my specialty." Do-hyun appeared beside me before Moon-sik could smile again. I touched his sleeve, the first public gesture that had not been forced by performance, and felt him steady. Moon-sik noticed. Of course he did. "Enjoy tonight, Mr. Sun. Public affection is most useful before documents are tested." When he left, Do-hyun tried to say it was likely nothing. I reminded him that those words usually meant the opposite. After a long second, he showed me Attorney Oh's message. Moon-sik had filed a petition questioning the marriage based on coercion, employee dependency, and financial inducement. They might request a private interview before the council vote. I read it twice, then handed back the phone. If they request an interview, I attend, with my lawyer. Do-hyun warned me they would try to humiliate me. I told him I had worked coat check at a divorced couple's joint anniversary party. His elders lacked imagination. The private interview happened 4 days later in a conference room with too much polished wood. 2 council elders, Moon-sik, Attorney Oh, my legal aid lawyer, Do-hyun, Unseo, and I sat around a table that smelled faintly of lemon oil. Choi was not present, which meant his influence had arrived before him. They asked whether Do-hyun had offered financial support in exchange for marriage. I said yes, then explained the revisions, my independent counsel, the clause keeping protection in place even if I left, and the threats that had made legal help urgent. Moon-sik smiled as if I had confessed. I told him debt trained memory better than hospitality trained performance. Elder Yim, whose courtesy was sharper than most insults, asked whether I considered the marriage real. I answered that it was legally real, began as strategy, and should not be dressed up for comfort. Affection under pressure was difficult to trust, so I would not use it as evidence. "What evidence do you offer, then?" she asked. "My conduct. His conduct. The signed terms. The fact that I am here with my own lawyer, disagreeing with both sides when necessary. If this family wants a decorative spouse, reject me. I will be bad at it. If you want proof that Kang Do-hyun can share authority with someone who refuses to fear him conveniently, then I am excellent evidence." Moon-sik asked whether I would remain after the debt and security problems ended. I did not look at Do-hyun. That question belongs to me later, not to this council now. The interview ended without victory, which was how most adult battles ended. Outside the conference room, Do-hyun followed me into a side corridor lined with old company photographs. "You should not have had to answer that." But I did. I am sorry. For the question or for needing the answer? He leaned one shoulder against the wall, a rare abandonment of posture. Both. I looked at the photographs, younger versions of his father, his uncle, his mother, before her hair turned silver at the temples. A girl stood beside Do-hyun in one picture, perhaps 16, laughing with her head turned away from the camera. She held up 2 fingers behind his head like rabbit ears. He looked annoyed and young. "Your sister?" I asked. He followed my gaze. "Seoul. She carried the sewing kit." "Yes." I waited. He did not speak for so long I thought he would retreat into one of his locked rooms. Then he said, "My father used her marriage to settle a dispute with a Busan faction. She agreed because our mother was being threatened. She was 22. Everyone called her brave. Nobody called her trapped." The corridor air seemed to cool. I understood then why Kang Do-hyun planned weddings like defenses and why Do-hyun treated variables as if they could bleed. What happened? She left after 8 months. My father cut off her accounts and security to force her back. She refused. His eyes remained on the photograph. A car followed her for 3 days. No one proved whose. "I'm sorry." He nodded once, accepting the words without using them. "Is that why your father wrote the spouse condition?" After she died, he decided the family needed clearer obedience. My mother fought the wording for years. She won only one change. I could choose my own spouse if legally registered before the vote. Your father turned grief into a clause. He turned everything into leverage. The old anger in his voice was quiet enough to miss if one expected rage to announce itself. It did not make him softer. It made the hardness legible. "Do-hyun," he looked at me. "If you ever cut off my protection to make me come back, I will destroy every teapot your mother owns and then hire Jae-kyung to design celebratory cookies." For a second, grief loosened around his mouth. "Understood. I mean it. I know." "No, I need you to hear the whole thing. I understand why you fear losing the people who leave your sight. I understand why rooms feel safer when you hold the keys. But if affection makes you more likely to lock doors, I can't stay." He looked down at his hands. The scar near his thumb shone pale under the hallway light. "The first exit date remains yours. The debt case continues. Security continues if you request it. Your mother's vendor contract remains. Moon Jae-kyung's case remains. Yuna's school support remains anonymous through the scholarship fund even if you leave. I signed those amendments this morning." I stared at him. "You didn't tell me. I thought telling you would make it sound like a bargain." "It still matters." "I know. Why?" His answer came slowly, each word set down as if he had inspected it first. "Because I want you to be able to leave angry and safe." That was the emotional turn, though I did not name it that in the corridor. It was not a confession. It gave me nothing ornamental to hold. It simply rearranged the walls. Until then, I had measured him by the terms that protected me from him. In that moment, I saw a man building an exit he feared I might use because the alternative would make him resemble the people who had raised him. It did not solve love. It made love more frightening. For the next 2 weeks, I became polite in a way Do-hyun noticed and hated. I thanked him for rides, discussed schedules, and avoided the kitchen after midnight because he often stood there drinking water as if thirst had offended him. Jae-kyung, painting primer on her future bakery walls, called me a coward. When she said I liked him, I answered yes before I could hide behind grammar. She told me to say it after the vote if bureaucracy made me feel safer, but not to make a religion out of delay. The council vote took place on a Friday in a private hall beneath Juhwa's oldest hotel. I did not attend the vote itself. Spouses waited upstairs, which sounded archaic because it was. Kang Do-hyun sat with me in a tea room, wearing deep blue and looking calm enough to frighten gods. "You are avoiding my son," she said. "I am giving him room." Room is sometimes a hallway people use to escape. Your family has many metaphors involving architecture. We own too many buildings. I poured tea because my hands needed something to do. "Were you angry when he registered the exit amendments?" I was relieved. "Even if I leave?" "Especially then." She accepted the cup. My daughter had no dignified exit. People call freedom a risk when they mean it is inconvenient to them. I looked at her. "Do you want me to stay?" "Yes." The answer was so direct I nearly spilled tea. She continued, I want my son to have someone who interrupts him before he becomes marble. I want you to have someone who notices when your sleeve button is dying. I want many things. Wanting does not give me authority. That is a very inconvenient wisdom. Age should be useful for something. A message arrived on her phone. Her fingers tightened once, then relaxed. He won. I exhaled and only then realized I had been holding my breath. Downstairs, a muffled sound rose through the floor, not cheering exactly, more like a building adjusting to new weight. Do-hyun came up 10 minutes later. His tie was slightly loosened and there was a shallow cut near his mouth. No fight, I learned later. Kang Do-hyun had thrown a glass at a wall after his father lost a procedural challenge, and a shard had done what family arguments often did, found the nearest face. Yoon-seo stood. I will congratulate you later when I am less annoyed by your bleeding. It is nothing. Men say that when they want women to fetch medicine. Min-jae, handle him. I will handle your uncle. She left with her cane striking the floor like a verdict. Do-hyun and I stood alone among porcelain cups and the smell of roasted barley. You won, I said. Yes. How does it feel? Like tomorrow we'll have more paperwork. Tragic. His eyes moved over my face. Your protection documents are already filed with Attorney O. Nothing changes for you because of the vote. I know. I wanted to say it before anyone else did. Thank you. The polite words made his expression close slightly. I hated that I had caused it, and hated more that he let me. Do-hyun, I said. He waited. I have been careful, because safety can imitate affection if it arrives when you're desperate. Gratitude can dress itself up and ask for a ring. I needed to know what remained after the emergency loosened. His jaw moved once. And I still want to argue with you in kitchens. He looked at me as if the sentence had reached him in a language he had never expected to understand. I still want my own room sometimes, I said. I still want to work late events when I choose them. I still want my family outside your shadow. I still want the first exit date to come and mean something real. It will. I know, that's why I can say the rest. My hands were steady now, surprising but steady. I don't want to leave because I have to. I want the right to leave, and then I want to decide whether to come back for dinner. His voice was lower when he asked, And will you? That depends on whether you keep criticizing my buttons. Some buttons deserve criticism. Then yes, probably. The cut at his mouth made his almost smile uneven. Probably is more generous than I expected. Don't become greedy. I will try. The first kiss did not happen in the tea room. That would have been too convenient for the room and too easy for us. It happened later that night in the apartment kitchen after Mrs. Han had gone to bed and the city lights had thinned across the river. Do-hyun was attempting to make noodles from instructions my mother had sent him, which meant he had taken a family recipe and arranged the ingredients in terrifyingly accurate lines. You don't have to measure chopped scallions, I said from the doorway. Your mother wrote one handful. That is imprecise. That is how food works. Food should be replicable. Food should forgive. He looked up. The kitchen light caught the bruise forming near his mouth. I walked over, took the measuring cup from him, and dumped the scallions into the pot. Reckless, he said. Alive. The steam rose between us. He turned off the burner before it boiled over. Good. He was learning. May I touch you? He asked. The question was simple. No audience, no strategy leaning over it. I nodded, then corrected myself because nods could be missed when people wanted permission too badly. Yes. His hand came to my cheek, warmer than I expected, careful in a way that no longer felt like distance. I leaned into it by my own decision. When he kissed me, he did not take, claim, or prove. He paused close enough for me to change my mind, and when I didn't, his mouth met mine gently, the cut near his lip making him cautious. I almost laughed because even his kisses had risk management. He drew back at the sound. "Are you laughing?" "A little." "Should I be offended?" "No, you're just very you. That sounds offensive." "It is affectionate." "Ah." "Don't say ah like you've solved me." "I would never claim that." "Good." I kissed him again before he could become too pleased with his restraint. The noodles overcooked. We ate them anyway, soft and uneven and far too salty because he had measured everything except the seaweed broth concentrate. He looked personally betrayed by the pot. I told him food forgave, but did not forget. The first exit date came 6 weeks later. We met at Attorney O's office as required. She wore a cream suit, placed 2 folders on the table, and asked whether we intended to dissolve, revise, or continue the marriage. Kim Do-hyun attended for me. He had brought a red pen and the expression of a man prepared to dislike happiness if necessary. "Revise," I said. Do-hyun said, "Dissolve first." I turned to him. He kept his eyes on Attorney O. The original agreement was created under emergency conditions. We dissolve it. All non-marital protections remain as separate documents. Debt litigation, security options, medical payments, vendor contracts, employment protections, confidentiality. None depends on marital status. Attorney O nodded, as if she had expected this. Kim Do-hyun looked at me to confirm I understood. I did. That was why I could barely speak. "And after dissolution?" Attorney O asked. Do-hyun finally looked at me. "If Min-jae wants, we register a new agreement. No succession requirement, no family council condition, no debt benefit tied to status. Terms about privacy, property, separate work, shared residence only by mutual consent." "And if Min-jae does not want?" my lawyer asked. "Then we file dissolution, and I ask whether he will have dinner next week." Kim Do-hyun leaned back. "Annoyingly decent." "That is not a legal category," Attorney O said. "It should be." I looked at Do-hyun across the table. For months, paperwork had been the fence around us. Now he was taking it down board by board and standing where I could walk away. "Dinner next week?" I asked. "Or lunch? Your schedule is difficult." "My schedule belongs to a very demanding operations manager." "I have heard concerns." "From whom?" "Everyone." I signed the dissolution of the old contract. My hand did not shake. Then, after reading every page of the new agreement, after Kim Do-hyun argued over 2 property clauses and Attorney O muttered that romance created terrible drafting habits, I signed the revised marriage document. This one did not buy time, repay debt, or shield a succession vote. It mostly stated that 2 difficult people intended to remain legally married while protecting the exits, rooms, work, families, and names that had allowed affection to become possible. "Congratulations," Attorney O said dryly. "You have made marriage sound like urban planning." "Good cities need exits," I said. Do-hyun's mouth curved. "And tea shops. That spring, Jae-kyung opened her bakery with a line down the block and a sign in the window that read, in tiny print, 'Recipes belong to people before they belong to investors.' Kang Do-hyun sent flowers. My mother supplied a barley tea blend for the opening and pretended not to glow when customers asked where they could buy it. Yuna passed her semester with high marks, then told Ma Dong-soo he needed better posture for carrying bakery boxes. Ma obeyed her more often than he obeyed Do-hyun, which became a family joke nobody explained to outsiders. I kept working at Hanul table, not as an ornament, not as the boss's spouse visiting his own former life like a museum, But as the operations manager who still argued with florists and fixed seating charts and carried crates when necessary, though now Ma appeared from nowhere if the crate looked heavier than my pride. Do-hyun stopped trying to move me into safer positions and started asking better questions. Which events matter to you? Which clients should we refuse? Which doors need new locks? Which staff members are being asked to smile too much? Sometimes he failed. Once he canceled a late event car without telling me because a minor Choi associate had been seen nearby. I arrived home furious, took off my shoes, and placed them in the middle of his immaculate entryway like evidence. He looked at the shoes, then at me. I made a decision too quickly. That is the polite version. I interfered. Better. I apologize. Continue. His eyes narrowed. You enjoy this. I enjoy progress. He rescheduled the car policy with me, not around me. The next week, I overbooked myself, ignored a headache, and snapped at him for asking whether I had eaten. He placed a bowl of rice on the table and left without commentary. I apologized before midnight. He accepted by reheating the soup and criticizing my chopping technique. We were not transformed people. We were people who had begun leaving room for repair. Kang Do-hyun did eventually get her wedding reception, though not the one in her binders. It happened at my mother's market after closing, with folding tables, paper lanterns, Jae-kyung's tarts, Chef O's noodles, Yuna's classmates, Mrs. Han's kimchi, Ma pretending not to enjoy being seated beside my mother, and Kang Do-hyun in shirt sleeves because my mother made him help carry benches. Yoon-seo wore plum silk and declared the plastic stools unacceptable, then sat on one for 3 hours. At the end of the night, after the last guest left and the market shutters came down one by one, I found Do-hyun near the tea stall sink, washing cups with excessive concentration. You missed a spot, I said. Where? There isn't one. I wanted to see your face. He gave me the tired look he reserved for my worst jokes. You have become cruel. I learned from hospitality. On the counter beside him lay the crooked button from my old brown suit, now sewn onto a square of fabric and framed in cheap wood by Yuna as a wedding gift. Under it, Jae-kyung had written in tiny letters, "Confidence, repaired badly, still holding." Do-hyun dried his hands and touched the frame with one finger. We should hang it in the apartment. Your interior designer will resign. I will survive. Will you? With support. I laughed, and he looked at me in the quiet market with the cups drying between us. His sleeves rolled unevenly, steam rising from my mother's last kettle behind him. Months ago, he had needed a date for one night. His mother had tried to plan our wedding before I had even learned how his family sharpened love into strategy. I had entered through a contract, carrying debt, suspicion, and a suit with one failing button. Now the old agreement was gone. The new one sat in a drawer we both knew how to open, and the man beside me was waiting while I chose where to place a small, ugly frame. I took his hand, led him to the nail near the tea menu, and hung the button there first, not as proof that we had been saved, but as a reminder that some things stayed because someone asked, someone answered, and the thread, however crooked, had been tied by hand.